before you could have telemedicine or even have a brick and mortar retailer dispense it. The whole crux of these arguments now is whether, one, the
case is really about trying to control who has access to abortion and reach the people who were able to evade those bans.
And what is something that is widely accepted across the country as normal reproductive care.
Yeah, absolutely. So picking up on exactly what Laura was saying, you know, there's two big things happening in this case, and it's playing out very clearly in the arguments. Number one, it's about the world post-Dobbs and post-Roe v. Wade, abortion specifically, and what does it mean in American life, number one. Number two is the role of the administrative state. What power do agencies have to regulate and make decisions on things like drugs or food or air or water? And a goal, quite frankly, of the conservative movement, legal movement for the last half century has been the dismantling of the administrative state. And particularly Justice Gorsuch is one that deep in his bones believes that agencies have too much power. Even the FDA ought not to have the juice that it has to regulate. So whatever they write here, I would think is going to touch on some of those issues. However, you know, because the justices are free to write concurrences or dissents or whatever else. And what power agencies have to make decisions is a critical issue, and it's going to come up.
And Laura, this really has the potential to chip away further at abortion rights in this country. That's the big implication of this case.
Yeah, if you think that the prior cases are about whether it's a decision between your doctor and yourself as a woman deciding whether or not to seek out abortion-related services, now this is a question of whether the Supreme Court has a right to dictate what the FDA is able to do in terms of regulations and doling things out. Remember, the consequences are very big. It would not just be mifepristone. If they challenge and say that the FDA ought to have to have a new way of examining and evaluating drugs and how they have to go down the line to figure out whether they're available and how they should regulate that, that's just not just this drug. It should be all of them. Think about all those that then would leave the marketplace, not just for women or reproductive rights, but everyone. That's really the crux of this issue, why Alito was saying, well, hold on, is the FDA infallible? I think people leaned in even further to think, well, hold on, is he leaning in that direction to suggest that the FDA somehow is fatally undermining their credibility? That would be very sweeping.
Right. Nobody is saying the FDA is infallible. I mean, I don't think anybody's made that argument, but you could hear where the justice was going there when he made that comment. All right, Laura, Meg, Elliot, Sonia, thank you very much. We'll, of course, get back to you. Busy morning here in the CNN Newsroom. Stay with us. We'll be back in just a few moments. What's that, guys? Are we going to go to the next hour? We're going to go to the top of the hour. Thank you for staying with us. You were live in the CNN Newsroom. I'm Jim Acosta in Washington. As I was saying a few moments ago, I thought we might be going to a break, but we're not. We've got a lot of moving parts this morning. We're going to begin this hour with the disaster unfolding right now in Baltimore. A massive 1.6-mile interstate bridge has collapsed, as we've been telling you all morning long. This is the moment that the Francis Scott Key Bridge plunged into the Patapsco River in Baltimore, piece by piece, taking with it a number of vehicles and people. 6 people are missing at this hour after a huge container ship slammed into a column supporting the bridge. A short time ago, Maryland officials said the crew warned it was having power issues before the collision. 2 people have been rescued from the 48-degree water. 1 person seriously injured. This is the emergency dispatch call to the first responders as they were en route. Take a listen.
We advise the entire bridge, the entire Key Bridge is in the harbor. I advise again, the entire Key Bridge has fallen into the harbor.
All right, CNN's Brian Todd and Pete Montine join me now. Brian, I know it's been about 9.5 hours since the collision. Where are you right now? It looks like you might be on a boat somewhere near the collapsed bridge. Can you tell us where do things stand right now in terms of the search operations?
Right, Jim. We've been able to get to a vantage point that we think is a little less than 2,000 yards away from the vessel itself. I'm going to just have our photojournalist, Andrew Chrisman, go right past me. We have a second camera here operated by Joe Merkel. He's going to train his camera in as close as he can as well. There you get probably the best view that we're going to have of this thing for a while now. This is the nearly 1,000-foot-long cargo vessel, the Dali, that collided with the bridge, and you can see the entire middle section of the Francis Scott Key Bridge there has basically collapsed into the Baltimore harbor. You can see remnants of the bridge to the side of the boat, and if you can see just over the bow of the boat there to your right, there's part of the bridge that is lying across the bow. What we can tell you is that there are dive teams that have been going into the water for the last several hours, but the conditions for the dive teams are very treacherous. Our weather people say that the water temperature here is 46 to 48 degrees Fahrenheit. That is not a safe condition for divers to be in for any length of time. So they are in some dangerous conditions as they look for the possibility of finding some people in the water. What we can tell you about that is that there were 8 people, according to officials, 8 people on the bridge working construction at the time of the collapse. 2 of them have been rescued. 1 of them is hurt. 1 of them is unhurt. 6 people unaccounted for as of now. And as I think, Jim, you just mentioned, a positive part of this is that, according to the governor, Wes Moore, they were able to, the people operating the vessel were able to get a Mayday signal out in the minutes before this incident occurred, and they were able to stop traffic from getting onto the bridge. There were a few cars that were on the bridge at the time. Unclear at this point if there was anyone actually in those cars when they went into the water. So you do have vehicles that are in the water, a few of them, but not clear whether anyone was actually in those cars or not. 6 people now unaccounted for. And again, we're going to show you as I kind of describe the scene here. Look at that. The entire middle section of the bridge there is gone, and you can see remnants of the bridge there. It's going to take, I talked to a person who was involved in some of the excavation that's going to be taking place here over the next couple of days. He said it's going to take at least 2 or 3 days just to get floating cranes and other excavation equipment here to remove some of this. And this is outside of the rescue operations that are going on right now, Jim. And as we pan to our left here, I'm going to show, Andrew Chrisman's going to show you the Port of Baltimore as we kind of pan down here. That's that green vessel over there to your right. That's a vessel that carries cars in and out of the Baltimore harbor. All of these vessels are now trapped in the harbor. Nothing can get in and out. It's only one way in, one way out of the Baltimore harbor. You've got however many vessels we don't even know yet are trapped inside the Baltimore harbor. So this is a huge disruption of commerce that could, extend into the billions of dollars in the next few days, Jim. Traffic is completely stopped coming in and out of this harbor.
Yeah, Brian, I mean, that was one of the questions that was jumping out to me is, are you seeing any shipping traffic going in and out of the harbor right now? I would have to think it's basically come to a screeching halt. I don't know if you've been across that Key Bridge before, but I have, and it is a very important big bridge in the Baltimore area, and to have all of those pieces of that bridge in the water, I would have to think everything's going to be coming to a stop for weeks until they pull those pieces out of the water, make it safe for those ships to navigate through there, and so on. I mean, this is going to be a massive undertaking.
It really is, Jim. And to answer your first question, no, there have been no vessels of any size other than rescue and recovery vessels. And you can see one just on the other side of the bridge. This was an outgoing vessel, by the way. The bow is pointing out Baltimore Harbor this way. Chesapeake Bay is that way. This was an outgoing vessel. Jim, no vessel traffic aside from rescue vessels and recovery vessels. And you can see one on the other side of that bridge. So nothing coming in and out of here. And you're right. This bridge, very, very important for interstate commerce and traffic, and also hazmat transportation going north and south. So that has completely stopped. Again, the disruption economically here, you can't even really fathom it at this point, because they're just kind of trying to assess now how long it's going to take some of the recovery and salvage equipment just to get here. That's going to take days. So, but of course, what we have to think about right now is the recovery of people in the water. We know that there are 6 people now unaccounted for. That's where the dive teams are working over my right shoulder over there. You can kind of see them in the distance there, or at least some of the vessels that they're operating from, Jim. So it's a real calamity here, and it's going to be felt for days and weeks.
Yeah, and Brian, I mean, that was the other question I was going to get to. Is it just looks so eerily quiet where you are right now, and I suppose you could make out a little bit of that search and rescue operation, but I have to assume it's going to take time. I mean, we understand the NTSB is rushing one of their GO teams to the scene as we speak, but it's just going to take time, much of the day, for officials there to get their arms around the full scale of what we're dealing with here.
Absolutely. Absolutely, it will, Jim. And many of these vessels that are coming to the site here are coming from other places along the East Coast. We know from other places along the East Coast. Know that there is some salvaging, some of that type of equipment coming from south of here in Virginia, where they were working on the Harry Nice Bridge, south of here near the Chesapeake Bay in Virginia. That's going to take a couple of days for them to get here. It's going to take days, several days, just for some of these vessels to get here to try to.
Fewer casualties. Top of this